Hello, paddle people. Hope you're doing well wherever you are. Thanks for joining me, Kristen Thomas, on Supconnect Live. I appreciate so much that Supconnect lets me conduct these interviews every Thursday, usually at this time, which is 1 p.m. Pacific time. It's so cool that you guys who join us are from all over the world and love paddling, have that blue mind wherever you are, whatever type of paddling you're doing. But this show is focused on stand-up paddling. This is a first, which I think we're 110 interviews in, so we don't have a lot of firsts, but I am interviewing a lifestyle director today. How is that for a cool job title? Brent Allen is in Oklahoma, but spent 16, 18 years, long time in California, up in the Santa Cruz area, but is back in his native Oklahoma and has some really cool jobs, has worked on some amazing parts of stand-up paddling, and just really thrilled. He's not someone I have met in person yet, although we understand, we'll talk about where our paths crossed earlier in the Santa Cruz area. But I get to work with him in 2 months. So super excited. That's kind of how this came about, is something we're both very involved in, and we'll mention also is happening at the end of August in Oklahoma. So I am looking for Brent Allen outside, and let's see if he's on yet. I believe he's using his Instagram. And hey, it's Elle, how are you? Sounds like it was an exciting race this morning if you were down there watching in Oceanside. There we go, and there he is. All right, so it's Brent Allen, currently in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, I believe, unless he's out traveling, which he's done a lot of. So many great things that he has done and that he likes to talk about. There he is.
Hey,
it
man.
Works.
I know, this is kind of crazy. It's like I've done like Instagram Live, but I was always intrigued, Kristen, when I saw the split screen of you doing this, and I was like, huh. So
it wasn't too bad, right? But yeah, I mean, you are among your many roles, you are a commentator, and so you do a lot of this more than I have done. I just kind of fell into it at the beginning of COVID and have thoroughly enjoyed it. But yeah, this is an interesting thing, huh? But as long as you have a couple instructions, not too hard.
No, it's perfect. I dig it. It's just like anytime we can communicate in ways that more people can be involved, and that was probably a kickback from COVID here. But yeah, I'm stoked to have you coming out here. I definitely miss the ocean. There's no doubt. You can't be an ocean person. I mean, I've lived about half my life in California, and so, but there's water here in Oklahoma, and I have a purpose. So I'm down with changing things, and it's awesome.
Very cool, Brent. Well, we're going to back up a little bit to that, where our paths probably crossed, but we don't remember that we got a chance to have a good conversation. So I still feel like I'll be meeting you in 2 months in Oklahoma. But Santa Cruz Paddle Fest, I'm wearing a shirt from one of them, 2014. You were involved with, because you worked with Surf Tech and up there. But we're going to back up even farther, because you have that blue mind. You're an environmentalist. From protecting oceans to now protecting rivers and lakes and inland waters. Where did you first gain that love? Did you paddle? Were you involved in any water activities when you were young?
Yeah, growing up in Oklahoma, just summertime means you're at the lakes or at the rivers, and you're always in water. And, our family, my ancestry is Cherokee. And so I've always just had a natural sense of being outdoors and just love every part of it, and just being in nature, and just always very inquisitive. And so, because actually when I was a little kid, we lived in Rancho Palos Verdes from 65 to 71. And I would think back, as I got older, I was like, I wonder how different my life would have been if we'd never left and we would have stayed there. And I always envisioned, surfing and just everything that was normal sports. And then, Oklahoma, it's basic sports, hunting and fishing. And then we moved around a little bit, and then Oklahoma City. But then once I graduated from college, I went into law enforcement here in Tulsa, and then into corporate sales that put me and my wife in Charlotte, North Carolina. And that was the stepping off point where working, and I'm like a lot of people because everybody's got this kind of same story in different ways of go work hard, you know, you do the money thing, you think that's, you know, success is designed around that. And I was just miserable. And I was like, I met a guy that had done Ironman in Kona. And I was just, that was it. He said, you want to do a race? And I'm like, sure. And he's like, okay, I'll train you. And then I did my first triathlon in Kiowa Island, South Carolina. And from that point forward, it was just a trajectory of me being immersed in just doing more interesting endurance sports for quite a while. Yeah.
Well, that's such an interesting combination to say lifestyle / endurance. So you've worked in so many aspects of sport and very global and a lot of different types of sports. You're mentioning triathlons. So
Yeah.
that's kind of a wild combined job, and how good that you identified you weren't happy in what you were doing and found ways to work towards doing something else in life, which you've done a lot of that something else, which is fantastic. So in that time, swimming obviously is part of triathlons. So were you already a strong swimmer, or is that something you had to learn or try?
The funny thing is that I've always just been down to try stuff, you know, and I really, it's like, I'm willing to learn. And so, you know, I swam, and everybody swims as a kid and stuff, and that I had never had proper training. And so when I had left the corporate world, I got a job as lifeguard at the Mecklenburg Aquatic Center in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is a team location and was a place that had produced pretty much most Olympians that swam out of North Carolina or Charlotte. And that, so I was immersed in that world of coaches and really learning how to swim. And as I was training for my first Ironman, and then the bike shop that I used to do business with, when I left my corporate job, I went in, I said, you know, it's like, would you guys let me work here part-time? I want to learn the industry. And, you know, I knew the people that owned it, and they were saying, yeah, man, come on in. And so then I started learning everything about the bike industry. And that's just a pull together of so many things that are endurance sports. And then I just took it on. It's like you're doing a master's degree and learning new things, but that you just love it all. It's just fun. And I love being challenged. So it was, that's where my life changed. That's like 25 years of being in the industry now, of multi-sport and, I don't know, traveling the world. It's like crazy. You know this. You can go to different places in the world and you know people, and it's because we're all the same people that just dig it.
That's fantastic. Yeah. I'm sorry that our paths haven't crossed earlier, but I'm
they might have,
Kristen.
I mean, we could have been standing in the same sand somewhere, probably
those, especially those Santa Cruz Sup races. So so triathlon was definitely part of it. When did you first see stand-up paddling, or did you jump right in? Did somebody tell you about it first? How did you find Sup?
Me and my wife, Kelly, took a big trip. We just invested, put our money back, and then we traveled around the world in 2008. And we were in Australia for 2 months, New Zealand for a month, South Africa for a month, and then south of France for a month. And part of it was, you know, I was a pro liaison for some of the biggest triathlons on the West Coast. And so I had met and known all these top athletes from those countries. I always was intrigued with, you know, how these people grew up, really the environment, but then also I was learning more about the surf industry. And so being able to go surf like Noosa and Byron Bay and just J Bay and just Raglan, the best places in the world, it was just an educational, fun trip. And I came back with just the decision that I wanted to get more involved in the ocean industry. And from friends in triathlon, it was probably Rock Fry and Paul Huddle and all the crew down there from triathlon coaching and world championships and stuff, that they connected me to Surf Tech. I went up there And I was saying that I wanted to get involved with the industry, and told them about just niches of endurance sport athletes in this whole sport.
Hmm.
Um, and it began, and they let me do it. And so, and in Charlotte, the thing was about the announcing, when I was working at the bike shop, the yeah, chief operating officer of a big nationally syndicated radio show had come in, and I was going to go race at the Escape from Alcatraz. This is in 1998. And then they had me come on the show to just talk about racing. And then they said, we want to sponsor you. And then call us from San Francisco. And the next thing you know, I was on this nationally syndicated radio show for 2 years. And that's how I got into announcing. People thought I was a radio person. I was not. I was just talking about fun stuff I was doing. And then they let me set up interviews with other people that were the best in some of these sports. And, you know, Kristen, it really comes back to just core things that I talk to kids about a lot. You know, if there's two things to work on that will allow you to be successful in life, and that is your communication skills, work on them all the time, and problem solving. And so I just took on all of these things that are just fun and engaging, and pretty much just naturally what I am and who I am. So it's cool. Yeah, it's been wild.
Well, great advice. And that's a wonderful story of how I love it that people don't always like train exactly and find things almost serendipitously along the way. Yeah, I certainly don't do this either, but you do have a good radio voice, so I can see people thinking you're a radio host.
It just is, you know, we all get what we got, and it's, so I always, you know, the thing I'm most grateful about it, Kristen, about any and all that, when you get, after 23 years of being at events and things and all this, you have such a grand opportunity to share the stoke and make people feel good, and hopefully put something in their head that you say out loud that everybody hears, that changes them and makes their day. And I just, ever since I knew that that was kind of part of it, then I was all in. It's like you just get this crazy opportunity to be a positive influence on all these things you say over, for us right now, an hour. So
Yeah. So you surfed already. So you talked about surfing. Did you see stand-up paddleboarding surfing when you were out surfing on that long trip around the
you
world?
know, because I was involved with so many camps and clinics for triathlon on open water swimming, like for the Escape from Alcatraz, and down in Pacific Grove, and Lake San Antonio for the Wildflower Triathlon, and all these locations, you know, always having to do the water safety and the insurance for all these camps. I was just very in detail, you know, about how we created our safety plans. And when I saw the paddleboards, I was like, that makes so much sense, because I'd done so much open water swim coaching and things with clinics. I was like, you're standing on the water, everybody can see you, you can move to people really fast, people in boats and everything else can see you from. So actually, after I just kind of saw that, I did a webinar for USA Triathlon about creating open water swim clinics, and all of the details about water safety. And so it was kind of that first, and then the rest of it was
Oh, that's wild.
loving
So
the.
you actually recommended using stand-up paddleboards for
Oh,
water safety
absolutely,
in
and
triathlon clinics.
big
Cool.
time, because we're already doing it at races, at some of these races already, and then when I'd gone out and done it myself, if I wasn't announcing, it was 100% right. You could have an Olympic swimmer swimming behind you, and you could be at a very low rate of turnover, and they can't catch up to you. I mean, it's just that simple. And so then it just became a norm of water safety. But the other thing, it's like having raced from back in the day in open water swimming, that you know, the bad part of just when they'd have boats or other things out in the water for water safety, and you're out there, you know, really respirating, and just the whole thought of that. So it just cleaned it all up, and it really is an incredibly smart way to manage water safety depending on the environment of more flat water situations and stuff. But we did it at Santa Cruz races and other stuff. And yeah, it works. It's smart. It's just another side thing of when something emerges that becomes just the new thing, and you just start figuring out all the niches of the many ways you can use it. So yeah.
Very cool. So you switched from the focus on the endurance triathlon world into surf tech, into more surfing and water sports.
Yeah.
That's when you moved to Carmel Valley, I think you said, or the
Yeah,
Santa
we were
Cruz
in
area.
Carmel by the Sea from when I was moved out to work for Tri California, which was the largest triathlon event management company on the West Coast. That was 2001. So we were living in Carmel by the Sea the whole time, 18 years. And it was just tripped into living there. We could have lived anywhere on the peninsula and stuff, but it was just kind of like we found it. And then, you know, it's just like this whole world of how this works is most people would say, how do you live in Carmel by the Sea, California? It's crazy expensive. It's like, you know, you must have a lot of money if you're, and I'm like, but it's different when your vibe and who you are as a person, you just get connected to all kinds of people. So we were able to have a rental that was a 2-story at Dolores and 12th because I met a friend that was a photographer in the cycling industry, and it was the house that they rented. So they rented us for nothing. And we were there for that whole time. And it's like, everything isn't as it seems. And that's what this whole industry, you know, Aloha Spirit, everything about this lifestyle, it just is really cool. And that's why it's like, it's so important to me to pull more people in because it'll change your life. There's no doubt.
Love that. So stand-up paddling.
Yeah.
Again, you love all these different sports and everything, but we focus on that. So Surf Tech, they were an early leader for sure in stand-up paddling and producing it. And this Santa Cruz event that I have alluded to is amazing because it's both a surf and a sup surfing and a sup racing event, but it's built on top of a kayak surf event that has been around forever and has this opportunity to be at Steamer Lane, which if you're a surfer, you know Steamer Lane off the cliffs of Santa Cruz. It's a really cool break because it's good and big on the outside, then it reforms again to kind of an intermediate level, and then on the inside, on the sand, perfect place to learn to surf there at Cowell's. Talk about that event. Were you in from the beginning, or?
So that's actually a separate event that was every March there in Santa Cruz, and then Surf Tech added to that. When they started adding the surfing, paddle boards at the lane. And then on top of that, they evolved it to where we had added some races that went out of Cowell's Beach and even some prone races, stand-up paddle races. But it was kind of funny when I was announcing at that, and Duke Brower was the primary marketing person, and the person that brought me on of being an independent contractor working with it was a guy named JG or John Griffith, and then the owner of Surf Tech is Randy French. But all of them just hyper dynamic, smart people. I mean, really blaze the trail in so many ways. JG with Quicksilver putting it in of being an outside rep, Randy going from windsurf industry. And so he was already set up and understood how you made things that were bigger like this, and then got connected with Laird. And so one of the first times Duke brought me over there to help announce at that event, one of the kids that I was like, I didn't know who he was. And here's this little kid comes running around the tent, and he's like, you know, in board shorts, it's cold. And it was Zane Spicer. And I mean, this kid could just talk. And I was like, wow. And it was kind of funny. And it was like, you don't know who people are. And then it's like now time goes by, and I've known Zane and his family. And the last things I was involved really with them was Dan Van Dyke had brought me down to announce at the Stand Up for the Cure in Newport Beach, and so then just understanding it better and seeing Zane every once in a while. But the kicker that was the big race every year that really was the draw because it was so core was the Jay Moriarty Memorial Paddleboard race that evolved. And, you know, you had a short course, it was 2 miles, and then the 12-mile race. And it just had a draw of everybody with rock and roll just coming north to race in that. And Jay's story was just so cool because it's what we're talking about. He's just a good kid that, you know, really influenced the older people in his community by how he carried himself. And, you know, I've known Frosty and Bob Pearson, and, you know, listening to them talk and listening to Bob tell me that, Bob Pearson saying, Brent, it was like how much that kid influenced him of just stoke and behavior and all that. And it was just such good, it's just had soul, you know. It was a real deal of high energy and just fun. And it was like one of the last races where I was announcing there. The America's Cup was in San Francisco. And I am watching 60 Minutes. It's the Sunday before the following weekend was the race. And I'm watching the story on Jimmy Spithill, this Australian captain of, and the guy's just gnarly. I mean, just real deal. He was like a boxer, but this guy is fit and like no joke. And so I'm there on the sand at Capitola, and, you know, we're announcing, you're getting input from the field, telling you where everybody's at. And I hear Spithill over time, but it didn't cross my mind because I knew Becker, and I'd known him since he was younger and doing this. And so he was leading the whole way in the race on the 12-mile race on 14 foot. And they're coming into the beach, and I'm watching him, and it's like, here's Becker at the front. There's no way that the guy was going to catch him. And then it finally clicked. I was like, dude, that's Jimmy Spithill, the guy I just watched on 60 Minutes that's getting ready to captain, you know, Oracle at the America's Cup in San Francisco, which was just like not more than a couple of weeks away. And he came in second. And so it was crazy because then I could interview him right there after watching on 60 Minutes. And that's the cool part of all this. You really get to talk to and understand things. It's such a high level. And I've been able to meet so many people just like that throughout a career, that it just keeps you engaged about the human spirit and that anything is possible, because people do it all the time. It's just bizarre. So, yeah.
That's great. Exciting stuff. Okay. Well, our paths have crossed many times. Stand Up for the Cure with Dan. I've done that in every capacity down here in Newport. You've been at that. You've probably commentated other races I've been at too. So fantastic. And again, we're going to be working together soon in a couple of months.
Yeah.
So while you were up there, you had a really neat role in the Monterey Bay, and had some specific things you worked on as an environmentalist. Talk a bit about that.
Yeah, that was, it was like everything, to tell you the truth, Kristen. It's like, I have no intention. It's usually something just is put in front of me, and then it just changes what I end up doing. And so how that worked out of me getting involved with ocean pollution in the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary of living in Carmel was, once I started paddleboarding, you know, we'd paddle over to Stillwater Cove and Pebble Beach, and, you know, you could paddle over to Point Lobos just south of Carmel, and be in areas that nobody sees really. I mean, you might have some scuba divers and Zodiacs, but it's really pretty raw even. And so when I'd go over there to the north side of Point Lobos, every time I would end up seeing trash, plastic stuff in the kelp beds. So never crossed my mind. I just would put it on my board. When I came back in, put it in the trash. And then there's an event called Whale Fest in Monterey every year. And Surfrider was there. And I went, I think I volunteered. I'd never like volunteered at anything like, because I'd worked in the industry so long, and so I got educated by the people about microplastics. And I was starting to really understand what was happening. And so then it became like, when I would go over there now, I was really consciously starting to figure out. And so then I was like, well, I'll get with State Parks and some other people, and let's set up the first stand-up paddle kelp bed cleanup. And, it was limited because all the layers of protection they have at that park is, I mean, you're in a marine sanctuary, it's a marine protected area. And then they have another thing. So they only allowed, I think, 6 or 7 of us. So I got people from the local Surfrider chapter, taught them how to paddleboard. And then we did the first cleanup. And then I started doing it every year. And they basically allowed me more and more opportunity to bring more people in. And so by the time I'd stopped, or before we moved, we had created it to be able to have people in kayaks, paddleboards, and then divers, even cleaning under the water. And it was really about bringing the community of water people together, of being aware that even what people perceive to be some of the most dynamic ocean environments of beauty, when you look a little closer, you find out that the problem is everywhere. And so I'd figured out, it was just like I dove in. I was like, this isn't okay. I'm invested. And the photo I had sent to you of the humpback spy hopping next to me, I mean, it was next to me, and I was on a kelp bed. I knew I was safe. I knew it couldn't get on to where I was at. So that changed it all that day. That was, I think, September in 2014. So there was the first time anybody'd seen a group of about 20 humpback whales came into the Carmel Bay, and they had cornered a big group of bait fish into the Stillwater Cove. I had to leave to go announce at an event, and I just said to myself, if I come back and the whales are here, I'm going to get on my Pearson 14-foot Laird Coast Runner, and I'm going to go out there. And I came back, they were there, grabbed the board, went over to Pebble Beach, and paddled out. And it was crazy. When you see whales lunge feed as a group, the sound, I was by myself. Nobody's out there. It's me on my paddleboard. And there's 20 whales swimming around everywhere.
Wow.
And it sounded like aliens. It was like the sound of a creaking ship of them lunging. And I was so crazy stimulated about just such a bizarre thing, but I didn't feel scared about any of it. I felt comfortable. And so I knew what the topography under the ocean was of where I was at, and I knew where to be and where not to be. So I parked myself on a kelp bed and just watched it. And it was nuts. They would come to me and swim. I mean, they were 25 feet away, right on the edge of the kelp bed. And, when they blow out, it's 300 miles an hour. And everybody that's been around whales, it is such an extraordinary, weird experience of being in the water. And there I was just by myself. And I was like, wow. And I had GoPros on it. I was like, this is crazy. And so I'm sitting there and I just was looking over one way, and this whale just came up and spy hopped and blew out. And I just turned my head and I looked it right in the eye, and that was it. I was like a lock. That was like, when I've watched all these people that have just, their life has been about ocean advocacy, they all have some weird story just like that. They looked into the eye, and when you think whales can be up to 200 years old, it's weird. Wisdom. And it's real. And so that was it. I was like, that's it. I'm committed. We cannot, human beings, we cannot allow these majestic creatures to be killed by our pollution. And I was like, that's it. I'm in. And from that point forward, it just kind of built its way out of working on single-use plastics going into the Monterey Bay and Carmel Bay to when the cruise ship industry rolled in. And then I was literally, when I saw that, I was like, you got to be kidding me. It's like, it's not like we don't have our hands full enough in this crazy, beautiful place that everybody's just trying to ruin something that has taken forever to bring back to life. And I was like, no bueno, this is not going to happen. And I mean, I'm seeing CeeLo right here that just joined. I mean, I just got surrounded with rad people that were like me. We were tuned in to being in the ocean. I always say we're all the canaries in the coal mine about pollution and water. We're in it. We can't miss it. You walk in the sand, you get in the water, especially in Northern California Central with all the kelp beds and stuff. It's just, you're completely aware of what is playing out. And so I'd sent you that documentary that was created by, actually that came out once we had moved to Oklahoma. So I couldn't even go see the opening of it in Santa Cruz of my friend Tyler Fox and Joel Hirsch and Swan Dive Media that spent all the time of creating this piece of information to allow more people to understand what was going on. And
mention it to people who are listening so they might
want to. There's created a short documentary that was basically telling you a story about in 2016 when the cruise ship industry just started targeting small coastal communities rather than the normal ports to start expanding their area. And so first time I saw one, I was like, what in the world? I mean, it looks like, if you've ever been to Monterey Bay in Monterey, it's like one day you drive by and next day it's like there's a building in the ocean and it's like does not fit. And I was like, I went out, got on my paddleboard, paddled around the whole thing to see how big this was. I mean, it's like you're in downtown San Francisco. I mean, you're looking, things are 3 football fields long and 23 stories tall with 1 million gallons of raw fuel. And if anybody knows the history of the Monterey Bay and the fishing industry and what was left there, it was diesel fuel and the stink of dead fish. That's why they invested in bringing it back to life, bringing the sea otter back to when they thought it was already extinct. These cruise ships were like coming in and anchoring right where all these little groups of sea otters had been. And I was like, this is nuts. This is nuts. And why isn't anybody saying anything? And nobody was saying anything, Kristen. I was like, we got all these marine biology universities, places. And so the short version is I actually had CeeLo that was on here. I said, hey, man, I got an idea. And it's like I never would go do anything unless I knew I had somebody that was 110% that everybody knows the ocean. So, you know, everybody is good. And I said, I want to go paddle out in the morning when one of these comes in to really see how big something is as it's coming at you and just how to get out of the way. And so CeeLo was the first person I invited out. So we did it. And there's this massive ship coming in. And it's like we looked like ants. And so the last one, when it was just continuing forward, I had 4 other friends. And I said, guys, before you do this, we're not going to move. We're going to stay there. And the ship's coming in. There's no marker where they drop anchor. So it's like, this is a place that is a recreational hotbed of kayakers, scuba divers. And so bringing a ship that big in, just nuts. And we got out there, had marine radio. And so Kristen, we're looking out at towards the opening of Monterey Bay. It's like a big fishbowl. There's a big fog bank. You could hear the horn of the cruise ship. And then I don't know who said, another friend, Ian O'Hala and Adam Helm, and they said, look over your shoulder. And Kristen, I look over my shoulder, and here is a big group of Rizzo dolphins swimming towards us, literally surrounded us. Rizzo dolphins are huge. I mean, their fin their dorsal fins are massive. Next thing you know, here's all these Rizzo dolphins around us. And I had a photographer that was like catching all this stuff. And then all of a sudden the cruise ship, I mean, it was like out of a movie. The cruise ship breaks the fog bank, and then the Rizzo dolphins are gone. And here we stood. And so we're listening to the radio, and the ship's getting closer. And then we can hear the ship's captain. I mean, this thing, like I said, is 23 stories tall, 3 football fields long, it's big. And they said to the Coast Guard, it's like, we've got paddle boards and packing our way to drop anchor. And truthfully, I don't think the Coast Guard wanted them there either, you know, because the Coast Guard station was right behind us. They never said anything to us. And literally, the ship stopped. And we're standing there, and it drops its anchor right in front of us. And it was bizarre, but it was, to me, the value of David and Goliath. Same thing. You got a bazillion-dollar industry that does not care, pollutes the ocean, sets all their primary headquarters in third world countries so they don't have to adhere to our laws, human rights stuff. And it is just sketch. People think they're U.S. companies. They are not. They are, and they pollute the ocean and pay the fines, and they just keep going. And so the crazy thing that's like the karma of it all, you know, it was like time to move to Oklahoma. I just knew it was kind of the shelf life to do my next thing was supposed to be here. And COVID hit, and the cruise industry stopped. There hasn't been a cruise ship back to the Monterey since I left. It's just like that. I was like, it's crazy. But, you know, the funny thing is that, you know, I've still stayed in touch about this, of like with friends back there. And I said, the mayor, Monterey, basically on the side said that they and other mayors around the Monterey Bay had, you know, agreed to basically just not allow them to come back in, because they aren't going to come in to just come in. If they can't offload people, they're not going to come into the Monterey Bay. And so as of now, that's what's going down.
Wow.
But,
well, good for you for being your own little Greenpeace, like fighting the good fight.
It's all the right people that just care.
Yeah.
And they care about what's left behind for the next generation. And that's kind of it. I mean, it's really about selflessness, thinking about others and not allowing the thing that brings all of us so much joy to be ruined. It's not okay, and it's never going to be. And that's why the whole thing with stand-up paddle just opened the door to more people being able to visibly see what is happening in water everywhere.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you brought this, you talk about the cool, the stoke, you use these surf terms. You are protecting the ocean, but you moved more to rivers and lakes, back to your native Oklahoma, or where you spent some time before. You have brought all these, like you said, positive attitude kind of terms and great philosophy and wisdom. What are some of the things you're working on there? So again, that's where I think you said you went to Oklahoma first and then found the job as lifestyle director. Did you write up that job description and present it to Riversport, Oklahoma City,
but I mean,
OKC?
I've done this for a long time. It's like, you know, create a niche of anything. And if it makes business sense, what's the difference? You know, if it is actually going to create whatever you're really working towards. And I really, you know, when you work in the industry and you really consider work as a professional, that you really have a working knowledge of tons of details because you've been in it, you've learned about it, and you end up coming to know all of these different people. And so, you know, the first time I came out here when this was being built was 2008. I was doing consulting work with USA Triathlon for the junior programs. And they had a Pan American race. And so I knew all the U.S. athletes and stuff and had come out here. And the thing that my wife, she had moved back already and she wanted me to stay in California longer. because she knew how much I loved the ocean. She was afraid I wouldn't come. Seriously. And so once I just accepted, it was like, that's my next place I'm supposed to be to make a difference. And so I knew there was my purpose that I felt coming back was one way or another. I didn't know what it was. I would probably be involved in something that would take care of the water here. And, you know, my family of Cherokee ancestry, they were here back in the early 1800s when the Trail of Tears was moving, and all these tribes were being pushed into this tiny place. And when both my parents passed away, I really started to educate myself on that. And so then it started to make even more sense to me of why I was so connected to nature and being outdoors. And I have a sense of feeling and knowing things I can't describe besides it's true. And like that first time I saw the cruise ship, I was like, this isn't going to be good. And it's like, you better start doing something.
I have to throw this out to you. I don't know, as an educator, there's a theory of multiple intelligences, that we all have our intelligences. And we in our culture tend to focus a lot on the language one, that written communication, especially, and math in schools. But there's all these others. And one of them is nature, that there is an intelligence about being connected to nature. And it sounds like you're one of those with that.
It's true. Animals, whatever, just like the whales, all that. I was like, there's a sense to it. And so when I got here in January of 2020, the first thing I did was just come down here. I wanted to see how much the place had grown and all of it. I was aware of it, all of it, since it, it built out, but I hadn't seen it in a long time.
And can you give a short description? Because a lot of people don't know, especially in the stand-up paddle world, because it's a huge paddle location, but it's whitewater, kayak, canoe, rowing. It's basically every other paddle sport, knows it well, but we're going to be introducing it to stand-up, right?
Yeah, because it's a perfect thing as far as just adventure race courses. And so just trying to, and a literal description, I'd say this is a lifestyle sports mecca in the most unusual place that you would never think you would find a place like this. And the other part is it is an absolutely unique Olympic training site in the United States. Nothing like it. There's 11 Olympic training sites in the U.S. and we are an Olympic and a Paralympic training site for rowing and canoe kayak. And most people on an Olympic level of sports, and I certainly didn't, Olympic canoe and kayak are just super skinny vessels that you are either seated in, you have your feet under Velcro straps, and then you have a little rod that your feet are going to be able to turn the rudder. And they are the tippiest thing I have ever been in by every margin. It is, you've got spoon designed paddles. And literally, if you are not like what they call, and everybody, if you've been in OC1, kind of the whole thing of just kind of sweeping the water, pushing against it to keep yourself upright. Well, this is both ways. You don't have an AMA to keep you somewhat to where you just turn in one direction. And so you get in, and it's the only thing I've ever been in. If you tip it over, it will sink. And they are light. And it's not like everything is just groovy and you flip something over. It is, you flip over, it starts filling with water, and you're going to have to get to a launch or somewhere to get it out, to empty it out. So I started learning that. Of course, I love, learning everything. I always just think about being a water person. You need to know everything. And then started learning about rowing. And so that was the original principle, Kristen, about this being built, was Mike Knopf, the executive director that was part of the original team that really put this together, that Oklahoma City had brought together what was called a MAPS program. It was basically, I worked in downtown Oklahoma City at a law firm as I worked my way through college, and knowing what this whole place was, it was nothing. I mean, pretty derelict. It was a downtown area and warehouse space and stuff around it. So they decided, if we're going to really become a city, in the United States of America that has a draw, people want to live here, we're going to have to build and create a atmosphere and design that attracts people. And so they started. And part of it was basically creating a dam and a canal system that takes the North Canadian River that runs from Colorado, New Mexico, Texas Panhandle into Oklahoma, to Arkansas, Mississippi, and basically with that created a static depth of water, and for an Olympic level rowing course that the whole distance of the Oklahoma River that's got a dam on the east end and a lock on the west end is, when I paddled the circumference a couple of weeks ago, it's 6 miles on the dot. It's flowing east, but the water's so deep, unless you had big storms, you really don't notice much of any current. And when the building that I'm in right now is the finish line tower, which is a glass building, I'm looking at all this as I'm talking to you. And so they created this wonderful environment to get rowing connected to the local colleges and universities here, because rowing wasn't a sport at all in a lot of them. So it created it. And the school that I graduated from, University of Central Oklahoma, when Title IX came through, they created women's rowing team. And now, of all things, University of Central Oklahoma, women's rowing, 3-time national champions,
Woohoo.
18, 19, and 21. And so it just goes to show now, you can create anything anywhere. And if you allow to put the tools in place, you will create successful outcomes that will change the trajectory of what is possible in an unusual place. Our kids programs that we have in rowing, they have produced like millions of dollars in full ride scholarships for kids to go row at colleges and universities all over the United States. And so the sprint kayak and canoe is just such a unique niche sport. But what everybody, how this came together was in 2021, we were able to do the Sprint Canoe Kayak Super Cup, and it was right on the backside of the Tokyo Olympics. So we had athletes coming from all over the world to Oklahoma City to race, and then it was a full production where they had a live broadcast of it all throughout Europe. And it was just cool because we are the only place, I think, in the world that has stadium lights for night racing here on the river. And here, when you announce from this tower that I'm in, I mean, it is pure rock star. I mean, we have stadium sound that when you're up here talking to people, they hear you from everywhere. And it's just brilliant.
And I have to pull in that we're on top of that 1 year later. We're expanding from that Super Cup, which is happening again, but it's going to be a whole festival weekend. And the two new big additions are Red Bull Rapids, which is a whole separate event on Saturday afternoon in the man-made water park that is something like most of you have never seen. There's only two in the U.S., right? That are actually like at that level. North Carolina. Right. But then the other big event is the first World Sup Cup in the United States. It's the first year that ICF is having these, the International Organization for Canoe and Kayak. And so we get to be a part of this festival. You mentioned the 10K is going to be one of the races. So you will get to see that dam and that lock. And you're going to be going over that finish line with this built-in huge glass finish line tower. There's 3 different races, we know. There is going to be the finals of sprinting for both Super Cup and for stand-up paddling will be under the stadium lights on Saturday night. Mm-hmm. There are, Red Bull is throwing one of the parties Saturday night, but there's also
that's going to be good.
A world party. So this Super Cup that maybe stand-up paddlers who race aren't familiar with are the 50 best athletes in the world are invited. It's an invitation-only event. So they're Olympians, but this isn't their Olympic qualifying or anything. So they're going to be there and enjoying it and have fun. And I understand they're going to throw in some fun ones, like maybe have the stand-up paddlers and the sit-down craft switch craft and do a relay, or some kind of fun event where we're going to mix it up a little bit. And that will probably be after they do their serious racing, because there is prize money, and it is an amazing venue, and there's going to be just such a great weekend. We already have secured one of the top U.S. stand-up paddlers, Connor Baxter, is going to be coming into town and doing a clinic. I hope there'll be some crossover. Like, I hope some of those Olympians in sit-down sports might want to try some stand-up paddle racing. I think it'd be really fun. So it's going to be an absolutely amazing weekend with tech, sprint, and distance racing, the disciplines under ICF. And you and I are going to be involved. You're our main host and commentator. So that's going to be a lot for you, because I think, are you covering 2 or 3 of the events?
I don't know. We'll see what happens. Besides, it's yeah, it'll be a lot going on. I'm glad that you brought that up, because that is like the perfect world of me just describing how hard it is to do a sprint kayak, not alone the canoe, where you have one paddle and you're on a knee doing it, which is crazy. But that's the beauty of it all.
Yeah, you know, and it will be very interesting, because the top stand-up paddlers also, their crafts have gotten quite narrow, kind of to that same like 19 to 21 inches craziness. But I don't know if they can switch to each other's sports without rolling off.
Yeah, it'll be, I think, you know, you just have a group of people, period, that everybody loves being in water and loves to be challenged and to do something and put everything you know about something else to work with that. And the whole thing with the Whitewater Center is, you know, as we have built more equity, because Kristen, in the long run period, for all of our Olympics, probably from here on out, you said in Tokyo, what we have here will be the setting at probably any summer Olympic games, because it's a controlled environment. You're able to manage it. It's been a long time. I don't know the last time they probably used real rivers outside of, to mind, having lived in Charlotte when they had the Atlanta games, was maybe one of the last times I can recall of them using normal waterways and trying to control dams and stuff. And so it's just a great design, because athletes, the other thing for, you know, the people that are doing the river sup, you know, we had Paul with Hala was out, but then Mike Harvey and Mike Tavares and his son, Mike's son, it's like
Miles. We actually talked about this last week. I interviewed Mike Harvey. He was at the GoPro Mountain Games, where Mike Key was there too. And actually, Paul Clark, I assume you're talking about, I'll be interviewing next month, because I love the whitewater stuff. I've done a tiny bit of it, but I think it's fascinating, and we try to mix it up and talk to everybody on this show.
It's a crazy, because I've asked these guys, I was talking to Mike the other day about it, and I said, Mike, I go, you know, I've only seen a video of 2 people, Miles and Mike, run our competition channel on an inflatable sup, period. And I was like, is it that hard? And he goes, yeah, it's that hard. And it was like, when Paul was doing it, you know, he's like, anybody that runs rivers, it's like, or this type of thing, is they run stuff in sections to figure it out in pieces. And then, but to me, if something's that challenging to the best, it just means it's the next thing that's going to happen, because people totally, that mental thing of how do you figure out how to do something. And the other thing that's on the backside of the event, Kristen, was this first ever, because Oklahoma State University does swiftwater rescue training there at the facility. And so the first time ever, there's going to be a swiftwater rescue competition after they have their national conference that's on the backside of all of what we just did. So as an eclectic, rad place of so many water things going down, I wouldn't say it if it wasn't true. It is the place to be. So demos and all the rest of it, I think we're actually going to probably pull together a lot of interesting people that are ready to get out of town and get back out into the world.
Yeah, we're going to have vendors, community village, time to get out on different crafts. Yeah, I'm hoping, you mentioned those guys, but anybody, if you guys are interested, I think we should try to get a Red Bull team or 2 together using, you know, one of those inflatable big boards maybe as the base and build the costumes and everything around that. But I think that'd be wild to be in that race. I actually was there for Paddle Sport Retailer, so I have the one time we were in Oklahoma City, got a chance to, I went down in a raft. I did not choose to attempt it on a stand-up.
I do have some fun things that we'll see what your time is here. That, you know, it's like you leave me in a place this long, I'm going to start trying everything to figure out what you can do. But the one thing you might enjoy, have you ever heard of these things called anvils? It's actually a
I know what that is as a tool, or
yeah,
yeah,
in a way. But it's a company out of South Africa, and it's basically something to ride a standing wave on. So if you picture a bullet, you cut a bullet in half and wedge out the inside. You got two little places that you hold handles. You put boogie board fins on, and your fins have leashes that go around your ankles. And so I was like, has anybody ever run the comp channel with one of these things? And they were, I don't know if they said yes or no. And I said, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Of course. And so if you just stay light, you know, stay on top of water and follow it, it's a ride. And so
Linda from Texas just said she's in.
Okay. That, of course, that's our people. It's like,
let's do it.
And we actually, one of the fun competitions we had before there was, we had our raft guides race inflatable pool toys down the comp channel. And so nobody had an advantage. It was no holds bar, and it was probably one of the biggest hits we've ever had on YouTube hits. And then if you haven't looked, Dude Perfect, just group of kids out of Texas that just, I mean, it's wild. They booked out the place last summer for 2 days and shot an episode. And they did this thing. They created their own rafts and stuff, and they had their own little competition. I don't know where it's at. Last time I looked at it, was 10 million hits of them. Wow. And it's, it is a known place now.
Let's have fun and create some viral videos. But what to me, I'm so excited as a race director is one thing ICF and ACA and the US do bring to the party is amazingly organized events. So not only do we have like 3 really legit races where you will be in, you know, preliminaries and elimination for sprint and tech, well run, on time, but so much going on. I mean, it's that we love competition and we love community. And yes, this 3 days is going to offer everything. So in a new location, again, for stand-up paddlers, there aren't a lot of people. I know 2 people from Oklahoma who stand-up paddle, and you're one of them. No.
I'm actually taking some friends out tonight that are from Peru. And it's,
nice. Great.
But we have a lot of opportunity to do a lot of cool things. It's like I said, the state has got so much water. You could be on adventure forever. And I will tell you, having been in the industry and been all over in water environments and just places, I guarantee you that you will really enjoy being in Oklahoma, and you will really probably be surprised at all the things that are here. And one of the biggest parts of Oklahoma, Kristen, is the people and of how people are brought up, of how you treat one another and common courtesy. And it's very noticeable. And so it's a priority of people that live here. And so anybody that comes here, I guarantee you, you'll really enjoy your time being here. And you'll probably look forward to, we've got a lot of friends on the West Coast. Brent, Tyler Fox is like, I want to come out and do all this stuff. And I'm like, so yeah. It's part of traveling. It's part of life. It's like go be new places and race in new things and live. So,
well, I look forward to. I think registration's going live within the week, any day now, hopefully. So we'll find us on Paddle Guru and on Facebook. We use social media a lot too, and I know you do too. So we'll both be promoting it going forward. And Brent, we could keep talking forever, but I'm supposed to keep these to an hour, which we're about hitting.
It happens. It goes fast.
So great to get to know you better. I now am like tasked with, for myself, I want to find a picture. I bet we have pictures together, even like where we're in the same crowd at one of these events, because you've obviously announced events that I've been at.
We're all kind of in some way or another pretty connected. So
Yeah. Well, we'll be looking forward to working together with you, setting this event up and being there in 2 months. But thank you for your story, and great. You have lots of wisdom and such an amazing outlook on life. And also thank you for all you do with, you know, saving our waters and taking care of it and raising awareness. So much of it is sometimes just being the, I think you mentioned it, who's the person who speaks up and speaks out. We need those people in the world. So thanks for being one.
Yeah. I love it, man. Kristen, we are going to have so much fun. I'm just telling you.
Okay, I'm ready.
Right on.
Work hard and play hard. Well, thank you. And thank you all for listening. If your friends missed this, it is recorded. It immediately goes to IGTV on Supconnect's channel. And then we will get it recorded and get it out to YouTube, Supconnect, KT Outside. I don't know if you have a YouTube, Brent Allen Outside, but I know that's your Instagram. So be sure to follow Brent, and he can do something with the interview if he wants, but he does a lot of this. So one of many things you're probably doing this week, but so appreciate you taking the time to join us.
Oh, it was awesome. Supconnect. Thank you, Kristen. Awesome. Great job. I appreciate you.
Thanks. Appreciate you too. Take care, and we'll see you in 2 months. Bye. Thanks, everybody.